The other day I made a music video called Arpeggiator, which was based on the Roland Juno 6's arpeggio circuit. What the arpeggiator does in essence is it will automatically play a set of notes. So if I hold a chord down like that, it's playing a random set of notes, and then I can adjust filters and things and give it all those sort of sounds. And you can actually use a hold button as well, so you can just literally press one key and you can fiddle with the filters to your heart's content and make all sorts of squidgy bass sounds and whatever you like. Now that works really well, and you can sit there and make sounds like that all day long, but it's trying to control it and keeping it in sync with other instruments. Now this synthesizer can be triggered externally. You just take a jack cable and you plug it into the arpeggio clock input, or arpeggiator clock input. Now if you switch the arpeggio on, nothing happens because it needs a pulse. Now this is how a lot of musicians will pulse an arpeggio. You can take an instrument like a drum machine and you can plug it into the input of the arpeggio, and certain drum sounds, if I just turn the drum machine up on its own, the actual sound will trigger. However, it's not very satisfactory. If I just turn the drum machine down a second, you can hear like a splatty sound. And also, if you run a pattern, it doesn't trigger very smoothly. If I listen to my original track, is it on that channel? No, it's not. It's the DO5. Oh, it's here, I think. I mean, you can hear it just wasn't triggering very well at all. So what you really need is a proper DC voltage to trigger, rather than trying to use the sound out of a drum machine. The answer is in the contents of this bag. This is something I recently bought from eBay, and it's a bag of components. Printed circuit board, some ICs, and some other components. Right, so how am I going to build this? Well, there's your circuit board, and here's the components. And I'm going to tip these all out. And we've got two connectors, a MIDI connector and a power connector. We've got two header connectors there. We've got a trim pot, another header connector, three header connectors, and then we've got a load of resistors and capacitors. Now, the first thing I'm going to do, and a crystal, I'm going to do the resistors first. Basically, what's called the lowest profile, so that the component that sticks out the least is what you would always put on first. So it's going to be the resistors, then the capacitors, then I'm going to mount the chip bases, which are these, and the chips are on that side, and then they've got little sockets there. I'll then put in the crystal, the header connectors, and then the sockets. And then hopefully we can give this a test. Now I could show you me building this, but that's going to be really boring, so I will fast forward this bit. If you really want to watch it in real time, then slow the video right down and put on John Mayall's Turning Point LP, which is what I'm listening to right now, because I've just read on Facebook that the guitar player John Mark has just passed away. So slow it down and put on some John Mayall. If not, I'll see you in about 5 seconds. I'm just taking a break here just to say I do feel my age now, because these capacitors here, the writing is so small on them, you really have to have a good magnifying glass so you can actually see what you're looking at, because if you don't, you've got no chance. So I would always recommend getting a good magnifying glass when you approach any kind of electronics project using small components. There it is finished. There's one spare capacitor, not sure why there was one extra. Maybe a miscount when the kit was assembled, but that's it finished. Now, I'm not going to lie, I found that quite tricky to put together. There was a lot of small components and it was all a little bit fiddly, probably my age. I've just checked the power supply requirements and it needs 12 volts with a positive tip rather than a positive outer like you would get on a Boss FX pedal. And I don't have a spare power supply to hand, but I do have the power supply for my Yamaha digital piano, which is the correct voltage and the correct polarity, so I'm going to use that to test this. Before I hook this up to any kind of musical instrument, the first thing I'm going to do is connect the output of one of the ports to a voltmeter, and using the website on the MidiMuso website, I'm going to try and patch a note to the output of the port and check the voltage, and that hopefully should be what I need to hook this up to my Juno. So I'm going to have a little play and then I'll let you know how I get on. Okay, if I'm going to be absolutely honest with you, I don't quite understand this, but what I do know is this unit does appear to work. This toolkit here is on the website of MidiMuso, and it hooks up to your MIDI interface on your computer, which in my case is the Tascam audio interface. I've got that plugged into the unit, and if you look at this table here, this spreadsheet, it kind of lists all the different things that appear on each pin depending on what mode you're in. On the board, that's port D, that's pin 1, and that's ground connected out of the board, and that's going to my voltmeter. I've got a voltmeter hooked up. I'm using mode 0A, which is this row of controls, and by going to the aux gate and pressing that button, I've now switched the aux gate on and I've now switched the aux gate off. I've kind of sussed out a bit more now about how this thing works, and if you look here, MIDI channel 1 corresponds with anything that's green on the output. So I've set the output channel to MIDI 1, and it says pitch 1 there. Now if I play a note from this on channel 1, any note, and you might just hear a note in the background because I've also got this paralleled up to my D20 synthesizer. So you play a note, and while the note's playing continuously, a voltage. So if I play a note, I'm hoping that might be enough just to give me the pulse that I need to trigger the Juno via MIDI. So I'm going to fire up Cakewalk now, and I'm gonna have a little go. Okay, on the website there's some MIDI files that you can download, and if you basically play them out of a sequencer, it changes the mode setting on the microcontroller. And by doing that and setting it to that mode that I had it in now, I've now got the sync channel that was used to trigger the drum machine when I wrote Arpeggiator. That is now going out on channel 1 into the microcontroller, and if I hit the space bar, it's there. So yes, it works. I've built something, I've sussed out how to use it, I think, and it's doing the job that I've wanted it to do. Now, this unit's very powerful and it can do a lot, and the more I learn how to use it, the more it's going to be useful to me. there you have it, MidiMuso's MIDI interface, which will certainly trigger a Roland Juno 6 perfectly, proper clean triggering, and for 35 quid, compared to how much a lot of these sort of retro kit things cost, it does the job. It does the job brilliantly. There's no splats, there's no problems with sync, no problems with timing. It works, and that's all I wanted it for. I just wanted something that works. This is just a quick addition to the video. This is my Yamaha CS-10, which I have had for a very long time now. It's a completely all analog synthesizer, and reading a bit more up on the circuit, I've discovered you can actually trigger one of these via MIDI. I've just gone handheld at the back of the synth, and you can see there's a trigger input. Now this is the same trigger that I'm using, that I was using to drive the Roland Juno, and you've got a key voltage input, and this comes out of another output of the chip, and this will set the pitch of the note that's being played. So between the two of them you can play the keyboard via any form of MIDI. So the D20 is going via MIDI through my MIDI switching box, which is here, out of this MIDI cable into here, and then this jack and this jack are going into here. And in fact, if I zoom in closely onto the keyboard and I start tapping away, you can see that it is triggering. Now it won't actually be completely in tune at the moment, and I think this is due to the volts per octave thing, and you've got to set it in correspondence with what the Yamaha requires. Now that's a bit fiddly. I've read up on the internet, and these things are not the easiest in the world to pitch, but it does prove the theory that you can basically play one of these via MIDI. Well, I'm over the moon. For something that was so cheap, I'm able to do something that I've not been able to do before, either with the Juno or indeed the afterthought of trying out the CS-10. The main thing is that I can use the arpeggiator in new music, and at the moment now all I want to do is create new music. So I'm going to be doing less technical videos over the next couple of months, and certainly once we get out of this lockdown I shall be back with the band making new music. I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, please like and subscribe. You never know what's coming next, and I do have a few more videos in the pipeline, and hope you enjoy it. Please share my channel, because the more subscribers I get, then the more I can maybe do more with the channel in the future. Hope you've enjoyed it anyway.